The House That Wrote Its Own Confession, Hollow Atlas, Episode 10, Narration Script, The Archivist. Cold Open, 3:15 in the morning, November 13th, 1974. Ronald DeFeo Junior, 23 years old, walked down the hallway of 112 Ocean Avenue, Amityville, New York, carrying a Marlin .35 caliber rifle. He entered 6 bedrooms. In each bedroom, a member of his family was asleep face down. He fired the rifle. He moved to the next room. The total time elapsed, based on the forensic reconstruction presented at trial, was approximately 15 minutes. A Marlin .35 caliber rifle fired 6 times, with no silencer, in a residential neighborhood in suburban Long Island at 3:15 in the morning. A neighborhood of standard American post-war housing, modest lots, close setbacks, bedroom windows facing adjacent properties. No neighbors called the police. The following morning, Ronald DeFeo Junior walked into Henry's bar on Ocean Avenue and told the barman his family had been shot. The Suffolk County Homicide Unit arrived at 112 Ocean Avenue at dawn. That is the documented beginning of the Amityville case. Everything else, the book, the films, the investigations, the arguments that have continued for 50 years, that is all the attempt to explain what was documented in the police report that morning. The House wrote its own confession. The question is what it confessed to. Act 1. The House and the Crime. 112 Ocean Avenue, Amityville, New York, is a Dutch colonial revival house built in 1924. It sits on the south shore of Long Island, approximately 45 miles from Manhattan. The house is large by the standards of the neighborhood. 6 bedrooms, 3 stories, a boathouse at the rear connecting to a tidal canal. The DeFeo family had lived there since 1965. Ronald DeFeo Sr., the father, was a manager at a Buick dealership in Brooklyn. His father-in-law owned the dealership. The family was prosperous by the standards of working-class Long Island. The house, 2 cars, private school for the children. Ronald DeFeo Jr., Butch as the family called him, had a documented history of behavioral problems, drug use, and at least one prior incident involving a firearm in which he had pointed a gun at his father during an argument. He was 23. He worked at the dealership. He lived at home. On the night of November 13th to 14th, 1974, he killed Ronald DeFeo Sr., 43, Louise DeFeo, 42, Mark DeFeo, 11, John DeFeo, 9, Allison DeFeo, 13, Dawn DeFeo, 18. All 6 were found face down in their beds. No defensive wounds were found on any of the bodies. There were no signs of struggle in any of the rooms. The pathology reports established that each victim died from a single gunshot wound. The forensic questions that the pathology raised were never fully resolved at trial. No defensive wounds means the victims did not attempt to cover themselves, move, or rise. This is consistent with deep sleep, but the rifle is not a quiet weapon. Even accounting for the timing of the shots, the report should have been audible. Consistent means the victims in each room did not react to the sound from the adjacent room. One interpretation: each victim was killed so quickly that there was no time to react. The rifle's operation requires a manual action between shots. It is not a semi-automatic. The 15-minute window is consistent, but the wound distribution requires each victim to have remained in a face-down position throughout. Another interpretation: something else was occurring that night that the forensic examination could not fully account for. The prosecution at trial presented the first interpretation. The defense attempted the second. Ronald DeFeo Jr. was convicted of 6 counts of second-degree murder in November 1975, almost exactly 1 year after the killings. Pattern interrupt. Ronald DeFeo Jr. gave 4 separate confessions. The first, to police on the night of the killings. A man named Louis Fellini had entered the house and killed the family. DeFeo had escaped. The second, to police the following morning after Fellini was located and confirmed to have an alibi. DeFeo had committed the killings alone, while in a state he described as having heard voices. The third, during trial, a different family member had participated. He named Dawn, his 18-year-old sister. He claimed she had killed the parents and younger children, and he had killed Dawn in response. The medical examiner's testimony addressed the third version directly. Dawn DeFeo's hands were tested and found to contain gunshot residue. This detail was noted in the trial record. It was not determinative for the jury's verdict, but it is in the record. The fourth confession, given in an interview published months before DeFeo's death in March 2021, at the age of 69, he said, in those words, recorded and published, "Something talked to me. I don't know what it was. I know what I did. I don't know why." 4 confessions. 4 incompatible accounts. The man convicted of the crime spent 47 years unable to provide a consistent explanation for why he committed it. The dog, a large Labrador named Shaggy, was found alive and unharmed the following morning. He had not barked during the night. No neighbor reported hearing him bark. Act 2. The Lutzes and the 28 Days. 112 Ocean Avenue was sold in December of 1975, 13 months after the murders. The price was $80,000. The comparable market value for the property was estimated at approximately $110,000. The difference, $30,000, is what the Amityville case cost the house. George and Kathy Lutz, he was a land surveyor. She was a divorcee with 3 children from her previous marriage, purchased the house and moved in on December 18, 1975. They knew what had occurred in the house. The price had made it clear that the market knew too. Their children were 9, 7, and 5 years old. George Lutz would later state that he began waking up at 3:15 in the morning, every night, from the first week in the house. Every night for 28 consecutive days. 3:15, the time of the killings. The youngest child, Missy, aged 5, told her parents about a friend. A pig with glowing red eyes she called Jody. The child described Jody as coming to her bedroom window. The Lutzes, during a period of snow in January 1976, found hoof-shaped impressions in the snow outside Missy's window. The window was on the 2nd floor. George reported a green substance seeping from the walls of certain rooms. A priest, Father Pecoraro, a friend of Kathy's, who had blessed the house on the day of move-in, reportedly reported to the family, though not publicly, that he had heard a voice in the house telling him to leave. Father Pecoraro has been interviewed multiple times over the decades since, and has generally declined to confirm or elaborate on the detail in public. On January 14, 1976, 28 days after move-in, the Lutz family left the house at approximately 2 in the morning. They took the children, the dog, and nothing else. They did not return. Their furniture, clothing, personal effects, children's toys, everything remained in the house. They left behind the possessions of a family, the same way the DeFeos had been left behind. Act 3. The Investigation and What Remains. Ed and Lorraine Warren, paranormal investigators from Monroe, Connecticut, conducted an investigation of 112 Ocean Avenue in February 1976, approximately 1 month after the Lutzes departed. The investigation produced one widely reproduced artifact, a photograph taken by a member of the Warren team, showing what appears to be a small figure with bright eyes standing at the end of a corridor. The photograph was taken in a period when, by the Warrens' account, no children were present in the house. The figure appears to be at child height. The photograph has been analyzed multiple times. No confirmed explanation for the figure has been established. The photograph is in circulation and can be examined. The Warrens are a contested presence in this story. Ed Warren died in 2006. Lorraine Warren died in 2019. Their body of work, spanning decades of paranormal investigation, is controversial among researchers, with critics arguing that their methods were insufficiently rigorous and that their findings were shaped by their prior beliefs. This criticism applies to their Amityville investigation as much as to their others. What is not contested is that they went into the house. What they found there and how to interpret it is the argument. Jay Anson's book, The Amityville Horror, was published in September 1977. It was presented as a factual account based on recordings and notes provided by the Lutz family. It reached #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. It sold over 10 million copies. The book's status as factual is disputed. Jay Anson was a writer, not a journalist, not a researcher. He received the Lutz family's account and shaped it into a narrative. The shaping is documented in the differences between the original Lutz account and the book version, where events were dramatized and some details were changed or elaborated for effect. This does not prove the entire account is fabricated. It does establish that the book is not a verbatim record. The film adaptation was released on July 27, 1979. It earned $86 million against a budget of approximately $4.7 million. It remains one of the highest-grossing horror films in American history, measured against its production cost. The financial dimension of the Amityville case is inseparable from it. The Lutzes left a house they had purchased for $80,000. The book and film rights to their account generated significantly more than that. William Weber, Ronald DeFeo Junior's defense attorney, gave a statement to the Associated Press in 1979 in which he claimed that he, George Lutz, and Kathy Lutz had collaborated on the story over several bottles of wine, designing it to benefit DeFeo's appeal and provide the Lutzes with a financial remedy for the house they had abandoned. Weber has maintained this account since. The Lutzes disputed it until their respective deaths, Kathy in 2004, George in 2006. The financial motive is real and documented. The Lutz family account is also consistent across 2 decades of separate interviews, across the deaths of both principals, and is maintained by the children who were in the house, who are still alive and still affirm what they experienced. Both of those things can be true simultaneously. Financial motive does not automatically mean fabrication. Consistent testimony does not automatically mean accuracy. The case sits at the intersection of those 2 uncomfortable truths. The new owners who purchased 112 Ocean Avenue after the Lutzes departed made one